Okay, so my name is Lauren Kreutzinger, and I'm a senior manager here at Von Lehman CPA and advisory firm. And we want to extend our gratitude to Fraternal Law for their continued partnership on this Greek organization series. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. We are, as you heard, recording the session, so we'll send a link to that recording post-event and for anyone who could not attend today. And then if you have any questions, please go ahead and submit them in the chat. We are monitoring that chat and we'll get to as many of those as we can. And then I believe there's some time at the end as well, if you do want to pop in with questions. So today we have Marc and Jennifer here from Favor and Company. And just a little background on our speakers today. Marc oversees the daily operations of the Favor and Company Denver branch and serves as an underwriter for Lloyd's of London property program and a liability underwriter for the agency's social and professional fraternity accounts. Marc's 25 years of professional experience in the fraternal community gives him an insider understanding of the risk management and insurance matters facing the Favor and Company customers, and is a frequent speaker at client conventions, annual meetings, leadership conferences, client board meetings, and industry events. He obtained his Master's of Education from Xavier University and is a certified insurance counselor and certified risk manager. Marc is the 2019 recipient of the Tau Kappa Epsilon Fraternity Salisbury Scott Interfraternity Award and the 2021 John J. Kuhn Award presented by Delta Chi Fraternity for his interfraternal service. We're also joined by Jennifer, who is the Senior Account Executive with Favor and Company. She works with the fraternal program and is also responsible for the daily management of the majority of fraternity clients and the area of property inspection. She is a member of Alpha Gamma Delta, currently serving on their international council as international vice president and on these Greek organizations are tongue twister. Alpha Gamma Delta's Fraternity Housing Corporation board as a director. Jennifer is a graduate of the University of Georgia and has earned her certified insurance counselor designation in 2018. So Jennifer and Marc, I will kick it off to you.
Thank you. And so thanks to everyone for being here and taking some time out of what I know are very busy days for you. So good afternoon or good morning, depending upon where you are. It's still morning here. Marc and I work out of our home in Iowa. So it's still coffee time for me, but please feel free to enjoy your lunch or beverage while we're talking today and sharing this time together. So thank you to our hosts, Von Lehman and Fraternal Law, for having us as well. We're very glad to be here with you. So just a little bit about who Marc and I are. As mentioned in the introduction, I'm very involved with my sorority, and I think that's important because I know where you all are coming from either a staffing perspective or a volunteer perspective. I've not served on a campus, but I've been as chief panelic officer. So I have worked with our campus-based professionals in that partnership role. So I really can take a lot of that experience into account as I'm working with our clients. I'm also a very proud mom of a current Alpha Chi Mega member. So we have our own, guinea pig right here in our house for conversation, and we're seeing what's going on campus and knowing what challenges our collegiate officers are facing, seeing recruitment, firsthand. So we're kind of right in the thick of it with you as well.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. So you can see our items here. I think one of the key things that you'll see here is that both Jennifer and I are heavily involved in our fraternity and sorority background. Having been on staff and having served in a variety of volunteer capacities, which does kind of give us a better advantage point to help our clients understand and us to understand where they're at and for us to understand them. Right now, I'm current president of hazingprevention.org, serve with Sean, who's on the call. That's been very much a passion of mine. I'm also trying to provide some balance to the non-Greek related activities. I'm current chair of the Iowa State Alumni Association Board of Directors, which is nice to do something that's not directly fraternity and sorority related. And Jennifer did mention our daughter is an Alpha Chi Omega. I'm glad she didn't mention what campus she's on because it happens to be the one out east here in Iowa. That's the big rival to my alma mater, University of Iowa. But we're happy that she's happy and she's doing very well. And you'll see a photo of her later on in the presentation.
So just to go over what we will be discussing today, pretty close to the description, I think, of the session. We're going to talk a bit about what campus life is today, and this is through our risk management and health and safety lens. Also provide you with some insurance market trends that you need to know, and specifically how it's going to pertain to what affects our chapters and our house corporations. Again, some health and safety education. We'll share with you some tips for how to make this a top priority for your organization and how to implement that. And then finally, we'll take some time for a question and answer.
So just a quick broad overview of what Favor & Company does. Favor & Company for now almost 40 years has been one of the leading insurance agencies working directly with fraternities and sororities. We actually started the fraternity and sorority insurance programs back in the late 70s, early 80s. And our goal is really to serve the business insurance needs of our clients and of college-based fraternal organizations. One of the unique aspects about our agency is that we really take our profits and turn it right back around and try to help our clients figure out better ways to reduce the frequency and severity of insurance claims. As you heard from Jennifer and I, we have several other staff members in our agency that are past fraternity and sorority members. So we're very passionate about Greek life, and we know that when fraternity and sorority is done right, it can be very powerful, very positive, and conversely, when it's done wrong, it can also be very impactful in a negative way. And that's really where we try to come in and not just sell insurance, but also be there to help you with health and safety programming. And I think one of the overall goals that a lot of people maybe not appreciate or understand is we don't have a lot of insurance companies out there banging down our door to insure fraternities and sororities. So one of their goals is to preserve the insurance market relationship that we have with Lloyd's of London. And we've got a relationship with Lloyd's now for nearly 35 years. So we very value that relationship very much, and they've been with us through thick and thin, and hope that can continue in the future.
Well, we can't start any risk management education if we're not talking about the risk management process. So this is something that at the corporate level, at the the K through 12 level, and at the fraternity and sorority level, is a tool for anyone who is in the risk management space and really the leadership of the organization to use when you are looking at your overall risk management priorities. We're going to talk, we use the word risk management specifically here. We're going to talk a little bit about reframing this to health and safety, but from the overall industry, this is really the standard thought process for any corporation or organization to use. So the first thing you want to do is identify your exposure. And in our industry, we take a look at things like alcohol, hazing, sexual assault. On the property side, is it fire? Is it water damage? Wrongful termination of employees, embezzlement. We've seen some large claims in that area. What's the threat? The Abolish Greek Life movement, lack of volunteers. What are we doing about managing properties? So all of those are areas of exposure that you need to start with and start identifying from an organization perspective. Then your next step is to analyze it to determine the level. So who's exposed? Members, volunteers, your national organization. And then what are your most important or your riskiest exposures? So kind of prioritize in that analysis what's most important for you to address or keep your eye on or to mitigate. And then finally, you find ways to reduce and control those exposures. And you can do those through a lot of things. You can do it through policy development and implementation, education, inspecting facilities through your loss control inspections, whether that's on a weekly, monthly, or an annual basis or in conjunction with your insurance partner. How are you installing and maintaining life safety equipment? And how are you educating and training your staff, your volunteers, and then employees at that local level that might be working with a facility? The fourth step in the process is financing your losses. Every organization has losses, again, no matter what you do. So you have to determine then, how can you project what your typical loss is going to be? And then how are you going to finance it? Are you going to be able to pay for that out of, budget? Are you going to, finance some of that loss via transferring it to the insurance agreement? What do you think your costs might be by analyzing history, and then how will you, budget for that cost? And then finally, you implement and monitor. So you implement those strategies that you put together during the reducing and controlling the exposure piece of the process, and then monitoring to see how effective they are or not are, and where you might need to make some changes. And then you start the process all over again. So you'll see this is a circle. It's never ending. Things are always changing. New things are coming up, as we all know. Pandemics hit, right? Hurricanes happen. So things happen very unexpectedly. And so we, as organizations, we have to be constantly going through this circle and this process in order to protect our assets. And assets aren't just dollars, they're your reputation. They are, your ability to attract good volunteers. So they're more than just the dollars that we think of when we think of asset in the normal, traditional sense of the word.
And as we move on from risk management, when we're talking with students and talking with volunteers, everybody kind of cringes when they hear that term risk management, because it's very clinical, it's very business oriented, and that's good for the headquarters staffs to understand that. It's good for the campus administrators to understand that. But when we're talking with students, we really try to shift that focus away from risk management more towards that health and safety term. And that's really talking about how do we ensure the long-term health of the chapter or the organization and the safety of its members. So when you're talking with students, helping them understand that these rules and these parameters are set up because something bad has happened in the past. And what we're trying to do is avoid repeating injuries or even deaths from some of the activities. So when we talk about the safety of your brothers or sisters, that really starts to help them comprehend and look at this from a different vantage point than maybe what we had done in the past. So we've had some success as we talk about the health and safety to the point where our agency has even created our Fraternal Health and Safety Initiative, which we'll talk a little bit about that later. As we start talking about the state of campus life and what to watch for and be aware of this school year, we've seen and you've heard some of these statistics, but we've had over 60 deaths in fraternity and sorority world since the year 2000. And I think over 35 since 2017. We've had 2 weeks ago a special on Dr. Phil talking about some campus tragedies. And last year about this time, there was a special on 60 Minutes. So there's been a lot of negative publicity about fraternity and sorority life. And one of the things that Jennifer and I work very hard with our clients is to try and prevent those bad things from happening. But it does seem to happen from time and time again. And that's why it's so important to have the programming and the education and to be on top of these things. As we look at some of the key things that are going on right now on college campuses, we have the opioid overdose epidemic. You hear the headlines about fentanyl being used and Narcan, which we'll talk about here in a second. But right now, the leading cause of accidental death in the United States is from this overdose of opioids. 70,000 lives lost since 2020, one overdose every 8 minutes. This picture here is some 114 pounds of pure fentanyl that was confiscated or seized by federal drug agents in Colorado this past June. They said that was enough to kill more than 25 million people, just with what you see there on the hood of that car, 25 million people. So this is a significant risk. It's on college campuses. You see the headlines. We're trying to figure out how we can help our students manage and to be aware of that. So much so that Narcan has been kind of a new buzzword in the industry. We've received a lot of questions about, does the insurance companies or do the insurance companies support the use of Narcan? And, really that's not our decision. It's really a decision based on your organization's risk appetite. We are always concerned about providing medical care or what could be perceived as providing medical care. But as you can see here on the screen, it is used by first responders. It's designed for home use. It is FDA approved, but it is, again, not a substitute for emergency medical care. We have had clients that have had Narcan be present in chapter facilities in case it needs to be used, and it has saved lives. We have had reports from clients that have had students use it to save brothers and sisters' lives. It's very important for you to discuss that in your organization and come up with a strategy that you feel fits your risk profile. Consult with your attorneys and be aware of any state laws that may or may not have an impact on the use of Narcan. Social event planning. Jennifer, you're going to touch on this one, I think.
Yeah, sure. So coming out of the pandemic, I think there was a lot of concern, rightfully so, from all of our organizations on how our students were going to react when they were moving from this virtual space to back to being in person. And I think there was a fear that they were going to be very enthusiastic about being in person together again. And I think they were, but I think we didn't necessarily see, at least claims are reported to us, kind of the significant concerns that we had all planned for. But I think it's because everyone planned for it so well. What we saw was a lot of education at annual conferences that focused on basics. So organizations went back to basic risk management programming, basic how to be a chapter member programming. And I think that worked. So I think we all need to be mindful of the effect of that. And again, it worked from the claims perspective. Now, you may have other issues internally that have come up from this. And then that's where you go back to the risk management model. But I think you all should give yourselves some credit for doing some good things in that education area, because we didn't see a particular spike in claims related to coming back in out of the pandemic. So that's fantastic. Alcohol usage reportedly down, but marijuana usage is reportedly significantly increasing. And then what does the combination of those two substances do? So I think that's where the education, again, needs to be happening from our campuses and from our organizations, because the data is telling us that that's a need. Sexual assault continues to be a widespread concern. I know there was just a recent article in the Chronicle, I'm sure many of you have seen, about, again, the increased focus of how are our campuses handling sexual assault allegations. That's of especially, special concern to the women on campus. So this is an area to continue to keep your focus on and continue to provide education to your members on.
One of the other key things that we've seen that's assisted the social event planning to help educate the students coming out of the pandemic is many of our clients and many other organizations out there are doing some online event planning forums to help educate and guide the students on how to plan social activities to be safe and to think about all the necessary exposures that happen, whether it be security or whether it be use of a third-party vendor, the contractual agreements, all of those things. There is some new technology out there that's being widely talked about and discussed, and that would be the new mobile application called Ticket. The North American Interfraternity Council is partnering with Ticket that can be used on a campus level with the Interfraternity Council and Panhellenic councils on campus. It's an easy-to-use event management software that has some features there where people check in when arriving and they agree to abide by the policies and procedures of that organization that happens to be hosting that event. So these are all good things when we look at how are we educating and how are we helping students plan these social activities. We are social organizations. We know that college students drink alcohol, and when they're doing so in our facilities and buildings, are they following the law and are they adhering to your policies? And a lot of these online event planning forums and these mobile applications are assisting students in planning and understanding what the expectations are when they attend these events, which is good. Jennifer, I think this is you.
Nope, it's you.
No, it's me. I'm sorry.
That's good.
Okay. Mental health, I mean, that's a buzzword out there. I mean, I think everybody has asked us about mental health and what resources do we have? How can we assist our organizations? And of course, that is something that we're partnering with a couple outside vendors that we'll discuss here in a little bit. One of the groups that we're using is Plaid, that has a piece on mental health to help our students find the resources and develop the internal mechanisms that they need to assist brothers and sisters when they're having challenges with mental health. We're also seeing a variety of things that we're monitoring. We're not necessarily concerned about yet, but we know it's kind of a pseudo change in operations or a deviation from the norm. And that would be things like independent IFCs or independent Panhellenic councils that are separating from universities. We don't know what that's going to do. Does that mean it's going to be does that improve or harm the risk profile of those groups on that campus when they're in independent IFC or Panhellenic council? The university recognition of fraternity and sorority organizations, we're also seeing some significant movement there. We have a lot more fraternities and sororities that are going to be unrecognized by the host institution for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's a disagreement on disciplinary measures. Sometimes it's a disagreement on recruitment activities. That is something that our office, and I know our friends in the insurance industry, are monitoring closely. Other things that are happening out there that we're also watching is we have clients that are moving away from having a chapter hosted at an institution. There's city chapters, whether it be the Boston area or some of the larger cities in California. And we're monitoring that carefully too. I think the key with the city chapters is having good, strong volunteers that understand how to assist and mentor the young men and women that are in those city chapters. Also, another new thing and creative ways for our clients to generate revenue. They're looking at recruitment of students from nearby campuses that may not necessarily be students of that host institution where that chapter is located. A lot of times these students are from a local community college that will eventually become a student of that host institution. There's just ways there that we're being mindful of, and we're working with our clients to try and figure out and take them through that risk management process that Jennifer went through. How are we identifying exposures? How are we monitoring those and analyzing those and evaluating them to figure out what rises to the level of priority, and how do we then develop mechanisms and education and control measures to assist them there.
So any questions on that last State of Campus Live topic before we move into the insurance market?
One more thing, Jennifer, that I didn't mention on the new creative ways to generate revenue. One of the things many of our clients are starting to get into as well is they're developing their housing arms, and they're managing some of these local facilities, which can be done very well. It's a change in their risk profile, so there's a lot more information and training and education that needs to be done. But we've always said that managing the facilities and making sure the facilities are have the appropriate life safety systems and are well maintained, that's a great way to reduce the risk profile of a local chapter. It's very difficult sometimes to legislate the behavior of 18 to 21-year-olds who are away from mom and dad for the first time and are experimenting and they're trying to have fun. So it's much easier to put the property mechanisms in place through proper management, whether that be a professional property manager or a sprinkler system, things of that nature. And we'll talk about property here in a second. Any other questions before we move on in the insurance trends?
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the market then. We'll take the next slide, Mark. Let's talk about property insurance first. We've had a hard market for at least the last 5 years. There have been a lot of catastrophic, events and claims that have affected property insurance rates. I know our office, in conjunction with Lloyd's, have really been able to keep those rate increases down related to that. That's kind of a benefit of having that larger portfolio of having all of your facilities together in one policy. But for those, maybe you have house corporations who procure their insurance locally, from an agent that might be, member of the chapter, they may have seen some other rate shifts there that are a little bit more affected by what's happening out in the broader market. And overall property rates are up probably 10 to 15%. And this is the first year we've had to pass a rate increase along to our customers, which I think is understandable under the current economic climate and the market in general. There's something for you all specifically to watch, our property valuations. We've already seen, because of the pandemic, and then the long-term effect of the supply chain issues, and Sean, great question, catastrophic claims. A lot of them have been in that hurricane area on the property side, so mostly natural disasters, yes. So the effect on that, so we've got a pandemic effect of supply chain issue and construction costs with labor shortages. So it's taking, number one, it's becoming more expensive to rebuild a building in the event of a partial or total loss. And then number two, it's taking longer. So your house corporations, or your national housing corporations, or if you're, university-owned facility, really need to think about that as you're exploring insurance. So number one, there's going to be some cost increases because it just takes more to rebuild your building. And that's going to be reflected in the property insurance cost. Number two, it's going to take longer. So you're going to have to think about, if there's a situation where you have to move all the members out of the facility and rehouse them elsewhere, that time frame they may be in alternate housing might be longer than in the past. So make sure you have plans for that in place, and also know that you've got the right insurance coverage for that, because there is coverage for extra expense, but just make sure that your limit there is adequate to pay for those costs if you have to displace them because of a covered peril. The most recent hurricane that has come through is not going to help. There's about an estimated $42 to $57 billion in losses as of yesterday. And this is up from September 29th when I pulled some data from our partners at CoreLogic. It's the software that we use really at the top of the line to determine replacement cost value. And on the 29th of September, they were estimating 28 to 47 billion. So you can see that we're already increased from that. And I think that number will probably go higher. This is the costliest Florida storm since Hurricane Andrew, according to CoreLogic. And for those of you who have facilities in Florida, we're going to have to watch, just changes in what type of coverage is going to be available. Again, especially if your property is not with, one of the large, agencies that work in the fraternity and sorority industry. But we're just going to have to see what happens there in Florida as a result. And I think this is just going to increase property rates further, just overall for the market. On the non-weather side, water damage claims are still our number one cause of losses in the past 5 years. And they typically come from damage to the sprinkler system by residents. They come from not having a good installation of your sprinkler system. And sometimes when you have that claim, we had a claim for a group that was over $1 million, and we were able to subrogate against the sprinkler contractor that installed the system. But keep in mind, when you're working with subrogation and trying to recoup some of those costs, state law comes into play. And in this particular state, we were limited in subrogation because the house corporation had not kept up an annual maintenance agreement with their provider and maintained that sprinkler system on a regular basis. So that reduced the amount of dollars that we were able to collect then from the sprinkler contractor. So if you are really taking a look at sprinklered facilities, make sure that there's an annual maintenance contract in there with someone locally, and your residents or an advisor or your property manager should be doing at least a monthly, just a self-check of that sprinkler system. But there should be a professional paid plan in place for annual maintenance of the system. And that's going to be really important in a claim situation later on down the road. And then finally, just planning for who's watching the facility during breaks. Again, this is when we see a lot of these things happen. No one swings by the chapter facility for a couple of weeks. We had a location that was unoccupied, and some water was running down about 3 floors for a significant period of time. And then they didn't turn the water off after we discovered there was a claim. So make sure that you've got someone there locally taking care of that facility when no one is living in it, because that's a time that significant damage can take place. Some other market trends and other lines of coverage, and the liability and excess liability side, alcohol is still the leading factor in 85% of our claims. There's a lot of things, we get the question sometimes just trying to compare costs between organizations. That's a little difficult to do because some organizations have no deductible in this area. Some organizations have very large deductibles in this area, and that all impacts what their premium is going to be. Just keep in mind watching sublimits for your chapters. If you have a program, with sublimits for chapters and house corporations, make sure that they are purchasing additional limits there, because I know host institutions this year are really keeping a close eye on those certificates when they expire, understandably so. So be sure that you're working with your students to help them understand, what they need to be carrying at the chapter level, and that you're in compliance with what the university requires in order for the organization to be recognized by the university. On the cyber side, we are seeing a very tough cyber market, and this is at least 2 years in a row now. Last year when I was doing cyber renewals for our clients, excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold, I apologize for my voice. I talked to an underwriter because we were having a lot of additional applications and additional follow-up questions. The cyber market last year was operating at probably 100% loss ratio, meaning for every dollar that was paid in premium, the carrier is paying $1 out in claims costs. So the cyber insurance is a very difficult market right now. So we're seeing a lot of questions and scrutiny around the technology piece of especially your headquarters operations. So if your organization has not implemented the multi-factor authentication, whether it's if you're in the Teams environment or whatever you're using, we have remote workers now. So people might have a PC, but then they might have a laptop, and then they're doing some work on a phone or on a tablet. When you're logging in and out, I know it's kind of a pain to have to get a text message with that 6-digit code. But most cyber carriers are requiring that in order to even offer a quotation for cyber insurance. So if you get that request, please help your staffs and just support those extra steps, because that's going to help you secure the coverage that you need. We've had clients that have unfortunately, fallen victim to some phishing scams on an email. I know I personally had one email too that we were moving very quickly, and it wasn't quite in the language that our company president would normally use, but I did respond back to it. And then based on the response, then once I looked at it, I was like, okay, this is a scam. But it's very easy to fall victim to these, and they're coming at us all the time. So please just encourage your staffs to be very careful in their email responses. And that's why it's important to have a good crime policy in place and a good cyber policy in place for your organization.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Anything else to add on that, Mark?
Any questions on the insurance market trends? To the health and safety education area, I have a former boss when I was working at my fraternity headquarters who always had the statement that stuck with me for years. If you haven't told them in 6 months, you haven't told them. I think it's important for us to be mindful that the undergraduate turnover, whether it be officers or just new members coming in all the time, it's challenging because you sound like a broken record because you're saying the same thing over and over and over again. But you have to remember your audience is hearing it for the first time in many cases. So you have to have that same passion and that same excitement as you're sharing the stories and the education to help them be safe in their chapter facilities and during their events. Really, we've got 4 different areas. There's a lot of groups that are using dyad strategies for research. There's a lot of good statistics coming out of that research, and when we encourage our clients to advocate for greater interaction with their students and trying to better understand where their students are through those research activities. That's very good. We're also seeing a lot more of our clients and a lot more emphasis and focus on parental or caregiver involvement in education, helping the parents and the caregivers understand exactly what is involved by being a fraternity or sorority member, and how they, as a key influence in the lives of their son or daughter, can help them better understand and make smarter decisions when they're faced with tough calls during their fraternity and sorority membership, or even just being a college student on a college campus. Another key thing that we're really focusing on is volunteer training, especially during and coming out of the pandemic. We have a lot of students that didn't have the experiences, so they don't have that knowledge to fall back on based on what they've seen or done in the past. They could be a junior or senior and not had a formal or not had a good initiation before because of the pandemic. So the volunteer assistance and training is absolutely a priority there. And then our industry advocates and partners, we've got some of the groups on here that our agency works with. We're very excited to kind of toot their horn. They've been great partners, and we're all mindful of how do we help the students be better educated so they can make smarter choices when faced with those tough decisions. And Jennifer, I think you were going to talk about our daughter Ashley here.
Okay. Yeah, so we wanted to use a bid day picture that we owned. We didn't want to just grab somebody's, but so here's our daughter Ashley and her bid day. She'll tell you bid day, best day of her life. But that's a day to keep an eye on. So we know from claims experience that bid days, the big little reveal day or big brother, reveal day, and then initiation, and those evenings. And especially the evenings when it's not in conjunction with your formal events, are your key times to really help proactively work with your students on what the expectations are. So a regular conversation just has to be taking place at the beginning of every semester. We're now in a place, our men recruit all year round, but our women are also recruiting much more all year round too. We're trying to keep that chapter total higher and trying to offer the sorority experience to more women on campus. And so we're having, more than one bid day or more than one initiation. So that conversation can't just take place at the beginning of the academic year. It needs to be year round. We continue to support having strong no alcohol policies in place for any of these events and communicating to your students, the why, and then what alternate programming can you suggest to them to do to ensure that everybody is safe on these particular days. And that leads us into the overall organization commitment to risk management. So we talked again about at the very beginning about our 5-step approach to risk management, and it all starts with tone at the top. So the board and the staff has to really, believe and be committed to health and safety for its members and for its chapters, and develop those priorities on an annual basis. You've got to determine what those look like for the academic year and make sure that you're committed to them, and how are you communicating that you're committed to them. The second step is going to be putting together a master risk management, health and safety education planning calendar. And that should be done by semester, and then drill down to by month, and then drill down to by week. Put then two in some specialized programming, have it ready ahead of time for specific chapter situations. For example, we have a program, Real Talk About Alcohol, Healthy Use and Action, that we give our clients to use when they are in a situation where they have to do an investigation or do some follow-up with a chapter in regards to maybe an incident that's taken place. So have those tools in your toolbox ahead of time and work with your partners to figure out what those are going to be. And then have a communication plan for how are you going to have regular and consistent communication with your chapters. Do all of your chapters have an officer that is devoted to risk management? If not, that should be a priority. And how is that built into your plan for the year? Do you have a dedicated staff person in that role? If not, we highly encourage you to have that. Putting your investment into your staff in this area and also to your volunteers that work with it is a really important organizational priority for your boards to consider. So if you're a policy governance board, ask about the priorities of your staff in this area. Are they included in your ends? Are they included in your monitoring? How are you at that policy governance level taking a look at health and safety and prioritizing it? If you're more of an operational governance board, how are you expressing this priority through the volunteer structure that you have in place, or the tasks that you have that are committed to health and safety, maybe in a committee? So again, taking a look at it, are you putting it out there in writing that this is something that's important to you? That's a way to show your commitment, and then to hold your leadership accountable to that. For every dollar in claim costs that are incurred, there's an estimated additional $5 spent on staff time preparing for lawsuits, disciplining chapters, loss of chapter revenue, negative publicity, and other negative impacts from a claim. So it is better to put your resources on the proactive side, better than spending them on the reactive side once a claim occurs. We provide a sample risk management education and communication plan to our clients, and it's broken down, by semester, by month, by week. So we have that for our team. We include links to video resources, so check with your providers too to see if they offer something similar that might help you put that together from scratch if that's something that you don't have.
Thank you, Jennifer. Speaking of commitment, so one of the things that Favor and Companies work very hard on with our clients is working with those partners out there. We worked with Being Plaid to develop a high wire course, which is basically an offshoot of their tightrope course. We offered that to all of our clients for free. It was kind of a high level reminder of all of the basics surrounding the key claim activities that we see related to alcohol, drug use, hazing, sexual misconduct, as well as there's components in there about mental health, as well as event planning. It's very nice. Our clients can integrate that with their learning management systems, very easy to implement. We're also in the process, we released some micro learning courses, and we've got more in the hopper there. These micro learning courses are really designed to be small, nugget-sized bites, health and safety bites that can be consumed by chapter officers, volunteers, even headquarters staff to learn about a topic that they may not be familiar with, or that will assist in key chapter risk management or health and safety activities. For example, how do you plan for a formal? What are the differences there? What about risk management in recruitment? What are the keys there? Those are just two samples of some of the micro learning courses that we're in the process of developing. And we've also partnered with the Gordy Foundation. You can see the photo on the screen is actually a screenshot of a poster that we have sent to every single one of our clients' chapter facilities, and have encouraged them to post the poster in their facility. And it's the Gordy check on how to be responsive to somebody that potentially has alcohol poisoning. These are the steps that you kind of look at. Are they puking when passed out? Are they unresponsive to pinching or shaking? Are they breathing? Is it irregular? Is it shallow? Is it slow? Is it stopped? And what color is their skin? Is it blue? Is it cold? Those are all signs of alcohol poisoning. And I think giving the tools and the education to the students to identify that is going to definitely assist in the long-term safety of our members, and will again reduce the frequency and severity of insurance claims. So these are just some of the activities that we're doing with our partners out there to show the commitment back to our clients that Favor and Company really does do more than just sell insurance. And that's part of our fraternal health and safety initiative. One of the other things that's coming out right now in some of the research and studies is showing that students really want that experience when learning. They don't want just to point and click at a screen any longer. And so that really dives back to what we did several years ago, about 5-6 years ago, pre-pandemic, is developing these training sessions surrounding the key areas of alcohol and other drugs, sexual misconduct, and hazing, where it can be done in a chapter setting with a facilitator, a PowerPoint, and a participant guide to really walk them through and discuss what their chapter does and doesn't do, and how they can improve their own health and safety practices within their chapter to, again, keep everyone safe. And that really leads us to the end of our time, and we're happy to answer any questions. And you can see our email addresses here on the screen, as well as our link to our website, where you have a lot of resources, but we'd be happy to take any questions. What does the liability claim level look like in 2022? I would say, compared to prior years, as Jennifer mentioned earlier, we were expecting to see some higher claim activity last fall, when the students were coming back to campus, and we had a share of incidents, but maybe not quite the claim levels that we anticipated. So far this year in the fall, it's been, knock on wood, relatively quiet. I can't think of anything that's been significant, but that doesn't mean that things have occurred, but just have not been yet reported. So we're keeping an eye on that. But we do reach out when we hear about significant issues. There was just we just saw a headline right before the presentation about a student death at Purdue that happened last night. Luckily, it doesn't seem to be fraternity or sorority related. So that was something that we still be mindful of the risks associated with just being a college student today, and how being a member of a fraternity or sorority can really help to reduce those risks because of the education and the awareness that you receive through your membership.
I don't see that we have any questions. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Amy. Oh, you know what? I'm so sorry. We do have another question come in. Do you take any position on amnesty policies?
Well, I think the amnesty policies, a lot of our clients are adopting the Good Samaritan type policies, and we support that. A lot of times it's a matter of how do we identify the potential problems and get the assistance by calling 911, saving that life, and getting it done. I don't know if you have any more color around what you mean by amnesty policies. I'm happy to dive into that further, but we're seeing that has been helpful over the course of the years.
Yeah, Mark, I read your pubs poster, and that's great. Actually, I hadn't seen that before. And it's a helpful explanation, but just how do you get kids to actually do this? And I'm not sure that's a great answer, but and I didn't know if Favor encouraged amnesty policies, discouraged them. I mean, there's arguments both ways on this thing.
Yeah, I don't know that we've taken a hard line stance. I think we're, always in that consultative relationship with our clients to help them understand the pros and cons, and especially, getting in touch with experts like you, Sean, and the folks there at Fraternal Law Partners to evaluate that, because everybody's risk profile is different. Their attitude towards risk is on that scale. I find it personally, I'm a fan of, I'd rather know and be able to act than put my head in the sand and try to avoid the knowledge, because I think it's going to come back around. And eventually, the more you know, the better that we can all do. And there's a lot of folks out there that are ready and willing to help and believe in fraternity and sorority life and want to see it continue on and on and on. The outlook from an insurance standpoint, rates are steadily increasing. Excess liability limits are hard to find. Everybody's trying new things, like we talked about with the city chapters. We're recruiting students from outside campuses that are not at the host institution. So it's a time of change right now, and everybody needs to be mindful of following that risk management process and using your vendors and your partners out there to help you do better.
Yeah. All right.
Luke's got a question. Are you finding that member arbitration policies help limit claims or help to control costs? Any cautions to add? Great question. Some of our clients do have those policies in place. I'm not sure that we have a significant amount of claim data to really say one way or another that that's going to help or hurt. I'm not aware of anything that's come up that we would say, hey, don't forget to do this at this point in time, but we'll continue to monitor that and keep you abreast of that, Lou.
Okay, so I don't see any other questions coming in. Mark and Jennifer, thank you so much for this presentation, this very valuable information. As Lauren mentioned at the beginning of today's session, we will be sending out the PowerPoint as well as a link to the recording. And with that, I am actually going to turn it over to, I think, Amy. I don't know if you or Sean wanted to give our closeout today.
I vote for Amy.
I was gonna say I can take care of it. Just again, I'm gonna echo thank you, Jennifer and Mark. I think I learned something new every time I hear you all speak, and we appreciate it. It helps us do our job better, and I know all the organizations appreciate all your insight as well. Just a quick plug for the Fraternal Law Conference that is coming up in November. It is November 3rd and 4th here in Cincinnati, Ohio. It is again at the Great American Ballpark, so we will have batting practice and all of those other good things. So we hope that everyone can join us there, and we look forward to seeing you all.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you both.
Thanks.